Check, check. All right, here we go. Hey guys, so welcome back to DP Uncensored. Devin Poslesny here with DP Production Group, ready for the next episode of this show, and I got a good topic for this one. It's not going to get me fired up like that, like those other topics we've done, but I think it's an important one because unfortunately we're seeing a common trend in high school sports that starts from a younger age. And what we're talking about is feeder programs. Feeder programs, not theater, feeder with an F. So let's talk about that. And what exactly is a feeder program? What is the purpose of it? And what are the benefits to it that not everybody, most people understand, but not everybody knows in the sports world. All right. So let me first start with an example. And first, I want to say, tied to this example, last night, recording this on Tuesday, the 8th of March. Can't believe it's March already. But recording this on Tuesday, the 8th of March. Last night, the Bellows Free Academy St. Albans girls high school hockey team in Vermont won their state championship. They went 22-0, undefeated, won the championship last night at UVM. And I want to just say first, congratulations to that team. We had been following them. We covered them a couple years ago before COVID. Since COVID, I've been in New Hampshire. I haven't been in Vermont a lot. And I've continued to follow them and to see their growth and finally get a championship. It's an unbelievable feat, and I want to say congratulations to them. Now, the reason why I bring them up, besides giving them public congratulations or honor, whatever the term is, they have a great feeder program, and that is the St. Albans Skating Association. Now, I know this because this past weekend we covered the Vermont State Amateur Hockey Association's championship weekend in Middlebury, Vermont. A great event. If you get a chance and you're looking for some great hockey, go over to our website, click on regional events, and the two 11-hour days are all there, live streamed and on demand to watch. Just skip through the videos to whatever game you want to watch, and they're really, really good. St. Albans, or SASA, was represented in multiple games, and they are really good. They're really good from the 10U level all the way to the 14U level. This is not only a testament to the coaching and the staff and the the group that the SASA organization has built, but that leads to the Comets winning championships. And here's how I explain this. These kids will play for St. Albans Skating Association starting at age, 10, maybe even younger. They'll play with the same group of kids all the way up, right? Now, the boy, there are girls teams, but there are also, youth teams that have a mix of boys and girls. The boys go to the same school, obviously. They go to Bellows Free St. Albans. And I believe they become Bob Whites, if I remember correctly. But the girls, I know this for sure, they become Comets. And it's the same core group of players that comes up through the rankings. They play the 10U. Then they play 14U or 12U. Then they play 14U. And then at that point, they go to the high school team. And then they play 4 years there. Then you have what we like to call powerhouse teams, because that senior class or that junior class that's playing the first line, they've been playing together for almost 10 years. That is an amazing example of a successful feeder program, because you have this high school team, BFA St. Albans, the Comets, who that head coach knows that he has a core group of players coming in their freshman year. They know that they have, quality players who have been molded by great coaches in the SASA program, and bam, you're not coming out cold when the season starts. You know that you got a solid group of incoming students. So that is, like I said, a great example of a successful feeder program, and that is an example of why they're so important, because the Comets, they're a powerhouse team regardless. Every year that they're playing, they're a force to be reckoned with in D1 hockey over in Vermont. Now, feeder programs can be something like that, where you have an association or a travel team like SASA is, that molds your players and hands them off to the high school team when they get to age, or they could be middle school teams. Looking at, let's say, Belmont High School, Coach Foley, every year when the freshman comes in, he knows that he has a quality freshman group coming in because of Coach Jeffrey at the middle school. So that is another example of a feeder program. Of course, like I said, you have your travel teams, like Guilford High School. For a couple of years, I don't know if it's still the same situation there, but for soccer, you had a couple of years ago, at least when I was a student there, you had a core group of players who used to play on Lakes Region United. And then they played for Guilford High School, and they still played for LRU in the off seasons. But because of that long bond and that long commitment to being teammates with one another, it made them extremely dangerous on a soccer field, because so-and-so knew that if he was going to send the ball to the top of the 18, that the other guy was going to be there because they had done it 1,000 times before. Like, that's an example of a successful feeder program. Feeder programs are also really, really good because if you don't have a feeder program, there might be a chance you don't have a high school team. And, when I was a student at Belmont High School, there was an upperclassman. I think she was 2 years above me. Her name was Sarah. She, for her senior project, taught some clinics at Belmont Middle School for for lacrosse, but mainly girls lacrosse, in hopes to spur interest. Because if there is no travel team like LRU or SASA or like the Lakes Region Amateur Hockey Association, the Lakers that they are, if there is no travel team, then you want at least something in a middle school before high school, or even something as early as elementary school. I mean, my little sister's 9 years old. She's playing basketball in the winter. And at her age, she's playing third grade basketball. They're just learning the fundamentals. Like, it's not like super competitive like in a high school level. But, you start them there, learning the fundamentals. This way, then in the middle school side of things, you start to put those fundamentals together. And then when they get to high school, bam, you have players who understand what they need to do and where they need to be and how they need to do it and how they need to execute it. Right? So when you don't have that, like, lacrosse is very new in the Belmont sports world. It's well established over in Guilford. Laconia has it. Interlakes has it. But it's very new in Belmont. So much so that the boys program had 3 seasons of varsity status when I was a student there. And then I think my senior year, or maybe the year after I graduated, the boys team disappeared because they just didn't have the numbers, which I'm willing to make the argument and say that if they had a team at the middle school or even clinics or something like that at a younger age, you would have the numbers when it came to high school age, right? So that is a negative to when you don't have a quote-unquote feeder program for a particular sport. Unfortunately, like I said, lacrosse is one of those newer sports in the Belmont sports world. So they don't have a middle school team. And if I'm not mistaken, they have like indoor lacrosse clinics, but they're in Bow or Hooksett, or they might have some in the Tilton Sports Center. I'm not 100% sure. But it's still a relatively new sport in the area. Whereas, like, hockey, Belmont, Guilford, Laconia, Winnisquam, Interlakes, they have that feeder program for the Lakers. Not to mention they also have the Wolves, the New England Wolves, the AHL team. So they have programs in place where, I think it's Jackson Embry. I'm pretty sure, actually, it's Jackson Embry. He plays for the Lakers. He played for the amateur hockey, not the high school team, but the Lakes Region Amateur Hockey Association's Lakers, and he played, and then he went to BG when he became of age into the high school sports world. But that gave him an edge. He wasn't brand new freshman lacing up his skates for the first time. Whereas, like with lacrosse, not to keep picking on lacrosse, but like lacrosse, some of these players, they show up to the field, they got the lacrosse stick that they bought from Dick's Sporting Goods, and they got goggles, they got everything they need, but they've never touched a lacrosse ball. They've never cradled the ball before. So it's a little bit of a disadvantage when you don't have that feeder program. But like those are your advantages though to having that feeder program, is having those fundamentals and those it has everything established. You lay the groundwork at an early age, and that's one advantage. And the other advantage is when you have a group of kids, like let's say it's St. Albans, they play together from, the age of 9 or 8 all the way to 18. And by the time that they're seniors on that Comets team, bam, they're a powerhouse. I was talking to somebody at that same amateur hockey championship weekend, and they were like, yes, Essex, I think it was Essex, they're a really good team, but they're made up of, once they reach the high school age, they go to multiple different schools. So it's like, it's a disadvantage once they reach a certain age, because then they're no longer playing on the same team. They're playing against each other, which, makes it fun to watch, and they enjoy it because they were teammates. They know each other, so they're just playing against each other and having a good time. You see it at hockey games all the time. These two players are going at each other, and then as soon as the whistle blows to mark the end of the game, they're over there hugging. They're high-fiving. They're having a good time. But that example for Essex can be difficult because of the fact that, that Essex amateur team is made up of multiple schools, which isn't an issue, but it hurts Essex high school program because now, you have your players who they've been playing together for a couple of years or whatever, but now they're going to different schools, and your freshman class is kind of broken up and not as solid as, let's say, St. Albans' freshman class. I mean, feeder programs are extremely, extremely important. Now, with that being said, though, and I will play devil's advocate to my own point here, some feeder programs can be detrimental to other sports. We've seen where, I'm just going to say it. AAU basketball will play, 3 seasons, 4 seasons out of the year, but then you'll have players who might play soccer normally in the high school fall season, not play soccer because they want to play AAU, which is fine, except for the fact that now that soccer program has 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 less players than they would have had without the AAU program. Again, AAU is great because it just develops the players' craft, and it makes them that much better. This way, when they go to try out for their high school team, they're a force to be reckoned with. I think of one player in particular, Vanessa Flanders at Guilford. She's a great player on the basketball court. She's a great player on the soccer field too. But when you have, let's say Flanders, if she plays soccer for Guilford, but if, let's say, that fall season she said, you know what, I'm gonna play another season of AAU. I don't know if that's even possible with the way the schedule is, but let's say she says that, all of a sudden now Guilford soccer doesn't have Flanders. And maybe one player is not enough to bring down a whole team, although Flanders is a key player to that team. If you get enough players to say we're going to go play AAU instead of high school soccer, all of a sudden now you don't have a JV program. All of a sudden now your soccer program or your football program or whoever is starting to fall apart because the numbers are falling apart. And I'm going to segue into my next topic here about talking about numbers and school numbers. And that we're going to stop talking about feeder programs. We're going to talk about, I guess, in a general sense, we're going to talk about numbers. You have schools who only have so many athletes, right? Who have only so many athletes and an extreme amount of sports that are offered. There's nothing wrong with the amount of sports that are offered at some schools. What's difficult is when you have a small group of athletes and basically not enough athletes to fill all of the spots on all the sports teams. It is an unfortunate reality that we have to live in when the reality is, I should say, is that there are some seasons where a school may not have enough players to field a team. We've seen that before, again, with Belmont lacrosse. Belmont lacrosse for boys, they were going up against, Belmont baseball that's been established for decades. And a successful program at that, might I add, because Coach LeBlanc is an amazing coach at Belmont. So boys lacrosse was going up against that, right? So think about that. If you don't have the numbers, why have another team? And I get why some athletic directors do what they do, because if an athletic director says, no, we're not going to add boys lacrosse, then all of a sudden an athletic director is getting emails from a parent saying, why aren't you giving my son the opportunity to play lacrosse? And that goes back to our first episode called Keyboard Warriors. But you get what I'm saying. So it's difficult when you have to balance that. And it's difficult when let's say you have a team that doesn't formulate. Like, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were talking about how their school may not have a softball team this spring. And that is just mind-blowing when you think about it. When you think spring, you think softball, baseball. In recent years, add on track and field. Now lacrosse at the high school level is playing in the spring, so you can add them to your list. But softball and baseball are some of your key springtime sports. And to think that a school's not going to have a softball team because of the numbers being down, it's mind-blowing. Because, again, softball is an established sport. If it was like a Belmont situation with lacrosse, I know I keep going back to this, but if it was like a Belmont situation with lacrosse and it was like a new sport, then I can understand why your numbers might be down, because you have situations where it's like, well, I don't know lacrosse. I've never played lacrosse. I'd rather go play softball that I've been playing since I was 12 through the Nor'easters or through the Lakes Region Chaos or through the Comets or whoever, again, those feeder programs, not to bring that back up. But like, to think and sit here and think that a school may not have that, that's terrifying, because it tells you that the numbers are just not there. And it makes you wonder why. In some cases, I think that some schools have too many opportunities and not enough kids. That might be the case in some schools. But in other schools, that's not the case. In other schools, you have the population. You just don't have the interest. And again, that is the concerning part. Why don't you have the interest? Why don't you have these players wanting to play? I mean, and there are some situations where a player doesn't want to play for the high school team because they're playing for a travel team. And you know what? In some cases, that makes sense because, they want to go play in college or they want to go play um, maybe even beyond college in a professional stance. And that means that they're gonna go and hone their craft and get the extra help and be able to be seen on a bigger platform, and that is understandable. But in some cases, it's not even that. In some cases, it's just simply that players don't want to play, and it's almost a vicious cycle in a sense because I've had conversations with players and said, "Hey, why aren't you playing on like you played this sport last year? Why aren't you playing it this year?" "Oh, cuz I want to be on a team that wins." "So you're not going to be on this team because they're losing?" "Yes." "All right, well, there's a vicious cycle there because as soon as your players start playing, the losing can just get worse. Especially with numbers, is what I'm saying. If you don't have the numbers, then you're not going to win. If you have one sub for a 90 minutes or 80-minute soccer game, there's a good chance that you're not going to win. There's a good chance. I mean, there are some exceptions, but if you think about it, you know, in a stereotypical general broad swipe, it doesn't look good for you. So it's like it's an unfortunate cycle, and eventually the sport gets phased out. And this goes back to what I was just talking about with softball. Let's say that school doesn't have a softball team this year, and the coach or the athletic director says, "Oh, we'll try again next year." All right. I like the optimism, and I agree. We'll try again next year. Maybe the incoming freshman class will have a lot of numbers. But do you know how hard it's going to be to potentially get that program off the ground again? Especially when you're in an age of COVID where money is super, super tight. Maybe not 1 year. Maybe if a school skips one season, they're not going to axe it out of the budget. But if a program lapses to maybe in 3 years, it's going to get removed. And now that program is going to be basically brand new, fresh start, and it's that much harder now. It's an unfortunate fact of reality nowadays with sports and numbers and such, because it's just, like I said, it's a cycle. And I give it up to these athletic directors who give the opportunities. And I got to say give it up to the NHIAA who will are very understanding and very not easygoing, but they're good with a school not playing in a schedule for a year, and then coming back the following year or whatever. But it's just in general, it's a cycle that's just a pain in the butt. And again, those numbers go back to the feeder program conversation we had, 10 minutes ago, when we were talking about how if you don't have a middle school team or a travel team in the area, that high school team every year is going to start, like, it's going to take at least 4 years or so to get that program going, because your freshmen, by the time they're seniors, they should be training, they should be molding your freshmen, sophomores. This way that cycle starts. This way you have consistency. But if you have, let's say, a freshman come on, play 1 year, 2 year, and then bail their junior year because their team isn't good, that consistency is broken. And now that team is going to rely on, one senior and 3 sophomores and 5 freshmen, or however many. And now that consistency, it's tough. And another thing about the consistency is also talking about, your coaching staff. And this goes back to what I talked about a couple weeks ago about coaches being removed and the the thought of everybody getting a trophy. But, if you have a program that has, 4 coaches in 4 years, your program's not going to do very well. Because every coach has his own or her own style, which, you know what, there's nothing wrong with that. But that style change is going to require the athletes to adapt to that style change, and usually it's going to take a game or two. And that's all that game or two, maybe even 3 or 4 games, could be all that it takes for the momentum to not be on their side or to get behind the 8 ball in a season. So there's a lot of factors, but it all goes back to the numbers and the feeder programs and all of that. And it's just, I don't know. I don't really have like a stand. Like, I'm not gonna get, here's my opinion. But it's just, it is an interesting topic to think about, and your more established sports in the area here in New Hampshire and even in Vermont, they got really good feeder programs. They have really, really good, whether they're travel teams or whether they're the middle school or elementary school. But then you have some sports that they fall flat on their face because of multiple factors going against them, and it's unfortunate. It really is. Moral of the story, athletes, stick through it. Go understand that there are forces out of your control that are causing your team to maybe not be so good, or whatever the case, whatever your concerns may be. Think of it fully through, and just gotta work for it. And a lot of these student athletes do. A lot of these student athletes are really good with it, and they're really, they're amazing. But it's unfortunate to see that quote unquote bad cycle to start, and then things start to fall apart, and then a program disappears. So, yeah. So, I'm going to keep this short. I know we usually go for an hour. Today will be 35 minutes. My topic was kind of weak, not going to lie. We'll work on more topics going forward. Also, since the seasons are ending for winter, we might have the opportunity to go and chat with more coaches. Maybe talk about spring sports. Maybe we'll do a spring sports preview show. Interesting idea. But anyways, always open to feedback, always open to recommendations. Send us a message. Let us know what you think. What should we do next? Should we do a spring sports preview show? Should we sit down with a coach? Should we sit down with an athlete? What do you guys think? Maybe we'll sit down with a winning championship team. I don't know. We'll talk. But anyways, send us your ideas. Always open to it. But until we see each other for the next show, don't forget, we're probably going to try and release this tonight, the 8th. But don't forget that championship spot is on the line. Semifinal tomorrow, actually here at Plymouth State. I'm sitting in the parking lot of the ice arena about to do a site visit. Watch the second game, Belmont-Guilford taking on Hollis Brookline Dairyfield at 7:30 p.m. Watch the second game live on DPPGnetwork.com. Got to do the shameless plug, right? But until we see each other for the next episode or the next broadcast, whenever we see each other, have a great rest of your day. Peace.